so we are recording and I'm going to share my screen. I'm really glad that you all are here tonight. Thanks for taking the time to learn a little bit more about the LYO. One of the most important things to start with is what the purpose of the LYO is. So the purpose of the LYO is not to be like a bonus youth group or to take the place of youth group or your church community. But the purpose of LYO is to empower young people to lead in the church and the world right now. So a lot of times, young people, and you may have heard this as youth, are told that they can lead when they're a certain age, like when they're older, or after you've graduated high school or something like that, that's when you can start leading. But we believe that young people of all ages are able to lead exactly where they are with the gifts that they have right now that God has given them. And so our goal is to work with high school students to help develop some of those leadership skills and to create opportunities for young people to lead both in the wider church, so on the synod level, for us, especially at youth events, which we'll talk about in a few moments, but then also in your home congregation community. So getting to test out some of that leadership in a place where you're known and where you can try out some new things. Some of the things we asked some of our LYOers to share with us, like what are the most important things that you want us to tell others about LYO? And one of the most important things that folks lifted up was that we strive to be an open and inclusive place, a place where all are welcome to come exactly as they are and be who they are, to use those gifts that God has given them. And so we are always learning how we can be better and how we can be even more welcoming. But there are all kinds of people who are in LYO. There are introverts and extroverts and people who don't speak up very often and people who really love to do some of the in front of everyone leading. There's all kinds of folks involved in LYO. And it takes all of those gifts to build the kind of leadership that the church needs today. And so LYO is for everyone. And again, like I said, we are always learning about how we can be even better. And that is part of leadership development, is always kind of doing some reflection and figuring out how do we improve our understanding of welcome and of people being included. Another piece was that we really strive to build community. And that's been really hard this past year or so as we've been doing it all online. And so that's definitely going to be something that in the coming year that we pay special attention to, because it's really important for you as young people to have multiple communities where you feel like you can be yourself and you can bring all your gifts and your joys and your passions and your questions. And so it's really important for us to build that kind of community in LYO, both with your peers and then with other folks in our synod as well. And so we'll definitely be doing some additional attention on that so that we can we can never make up for the time that we've lost this past year, but we can definitely remember what an important factor that has been for LYOers in the past and say, yeah, we really want to focus on this and highlight that in the coming year. We are going to talk a little bit about the teams of the LYO. So there are 6 teams, and each team has some specific ways that they serve the entire organization. And so I'm going to let the folks who work with those teams who are on this Zoom share a little bit about what their team is about. And then I will fill in the rest, and that'll help lay some groundwork for understanding how we accomplish our goals in the LYO. So I'm going to invite first Alex to talk a little bit about fellowship and hospitality.
Hello, I'm a member of the fellowship and hospitality team. We're known as the fun team, the games team, everything like that. We lead games throughout the weekends of retreats and everything. And what I forgot to mention last night is that we put together a covenant video every year, which kind of runs the groundwork and sets a set of rules that everybody follows at every retreat. We try to do stuff fun with it. We try to mix in, relevant like movies, TV shows, stuff like that, and kind of form them to how we can use them in our and you put our rules and our own twists on them. And then every retreat we do what's called a welcome room. So we're the first people there when you get there, and we kind of ease the pressure and kind of ease you into the weekend. And then we bring the energy throughout the weekend, and we lead dances for certain songs during large groups. Occasionally we'll crash some small groups and lead games, kind of break things up. And yeah, like I said, bring the energy, bring the fun.
Thanks, Alex. Anna.
Hi, I am one of the co-LALs for the music team. LALs are leaders among leaders. We kind of lead the team. Music in particular, at normal retreats, you'll find us up on stage playing the music and exactly what you'd expect a music team to do. This past year, we've been shifting focus to more recording music instead, because obviously we can't really meet in person. But we're kind of there to break up large groups a bit, kind of get some fun stuff so people can just move around and have fun and that kind of thing.
Awesome. Christine, would you talk a little bit about service and outreach?
Well, yes, I will. So service and outreach is a team that is focused on leading service projects and focusing us on areas of justice and ways that we can fulfill the greatest commandments to love our neighbors. And so the goal is to do that both within our events, but also to do that amongst ourselves and to lead the congregations of our LYOers in acts of service. And so we try not to say that we're the best team, but rather the first shall be last and the last shall be first.
So strong. Every team thinks they're the best team, which is great. So I'll share a little bit about the other teams of the LYO. So we have the small group team, or small group, as they call themselves. A small group helps plan the curriculum and leads small groups for our events. And so when a young person comes to our events, you're put into a small group with folks from your grade, and the leaders of those small groups are members of the small group team paired with an adult small group leader, so that that young person actually gets a chance to do a lot of the leading of that group, of helping facilitate conversation and lead activities, but they also have someone supporting them there. But then by the time, we'll talk a little bit about all the retreats that we do, but by the time we get to one of our spring retreats, the small group team is really well prepared, and they end up writing the whole curriculum for the whole event, and they lead all of the small groups among themselves. And so they do some really great work with how to be a good listener and how to start conversations and how to do some of those things that we do in small groups with relationship building and with thinking through some tough questions and things like that. Another team of the LYO is the worship team. So the worship team helps facilitate worship experiences at our events. If you've been to an event, you know that often the very last thing we do at one of our weekend events is a large worship service. So obviously they spend lots of time planning for that, but they also spend time throughout the weekend thinking about how do we connect the theme that we're talking about for the weekend with what we're experiencing in person. And so they do a lot of thinking about what kind of mood or vibe we're going to set at our events. And thinking about what kind of spaces they can create to help people feel connected to the event as it's happening. And then they do a lot of work with integrating all the things that we've experienced at the event into this closing worship service so that it feels a little bit like it's all come around full circle. And so the worship team does a lot of really excellent work throughout the weekend, both ahead of time, but then really thinking on their feet throughout the event about how they can bring it all together. And then the newest team of the LYO is the elementary team, or the E team. And they focus on creating opportunities and events and activities for children in grades 3 through 5. So it used to be that we had lots of things for just middle schoolers and high schoolers. And we realized that it was really important to be able to connect with some of our friends who are a little bit younger, because they are capable of so much wonder and amazement, and they think really excellent things about God. And so we wanted to create some opportunities for them. So we had our first retreat in May of 2019, and we were supposed to have our second one in March of 2020. So obviously we weren't able to do that, but they are really looking forward to gathering in person again. And throughout the pandemic, they have been working really hard creating children's sermons each month that congregations can use in their online services. And then during Lent, they created a video devotional series for each of the 6 weeks that focused on like the life cycle of a plant. And so there was a devotion, some reading, some reflection, and then a chance to do a little craft to help engage some of our youngest friends. And so they're always looking at ways that they can communicate some of those important things about faith to our friends in 3rd through 5th grade. The structure of our teams, the number of people on each team varies from year to year, depending on how many folks are interested in that team or have graduated, things like that. But they generally have somewhere between 10 and 15 people on a team at any time, depending on the size of the LYO. And each team has 2 to 3 adult mentors. So these are the adults that spend the most one-on-one time with you as an LYOer, helping you develop your gifts and think about the kinds of things that you're going to do at events, and how you can integrate the things you're learning in LYO with the other parts of your life, with your congregation, in your school community. They're just a really great adult connection for you to have. And they are, our mentors are all volunteer. They all volunteer their time to this. And it's because they really care about the gifts that young people have. And so they're incredible people. And it's always great for our young people to have another adult connection in the world who really cares about them and is invested in them. And then, as you heard Anna mention, the term leaders among leaders, or LALs, as we call them, those are members of each team who at our summer organizing retreat are elected by their peers on their team to serve as sort of the overall leader of that team. And so even though all of our young people are leaders, these identified young people serve as the liaison between me and our youth events team and their team. They help connect with one another so that if music team and fellowship and hospitality are thinking about doing something together, those leaders among leaders can chat with one another and do some of that planning. So it's the communication's a little bit easier. They help provide structure for their team meetings, like maybe setting an agenda or helping figure out where those meetings are going to take place. And I know that a lot of our teams are probably looking forward to getting back to being able to plan some fun social events among their teams. And often the leaders among leaders take the reins on that and really figure out what kind of group building activity can we do together. So that's a little bit about the structure of the teams, and then the work that each of those teams do and what that kind of looks like lived out. So how do we accomplish our goal of developing young leaders in the church? We do it a couple of ways in the LYO, and one of those is through all team meetings. So every other month, we get all of our teams together, as the name might suggest, usually at a centrally located church. We try to stick to places that are easily accessible from highways, but we have moved around in the past. We've been out to Delaware, we've gone to places in Frederick and in Howard County and in the Baltimore area. So in the past, we've tried to move it around so that folks are able to see a different place in our synod. Especially as we're looking at our partnership with the Metro D.C. Synod, we might look into having a more consistent meeting place, but that's all kind of still up in the air as we're figuring out what in-person gatherings look like. And we will be working on that over the summer and have that information for you. And really quickly, I'm going to pause and I'm going to send you, I'm going to put in the chat the calendar for the year, which is also linked on our LYO page on the website, but that's the calendar for the LYO year. So that'll give you an idea of what the schedule looks like. So at all team meetings, that includes a training, and we always ask our leaders among leaders, you know, what are the topics that are important to you? What do you want to learn more about, or what do you need support in for your leadership development? And then we are able to bring in really great speakers and presenters to talk about those things. And often it involves some, you know, like activities and moving around and the chance to connect with one another as well. So we try to make sure that those are engaging and relevant to all of our young people. Then each team also has a chance to get together and to plan some of the work that they're doing at the moment. All team meetings are also a great chance if you need to work with another team on something for everyone to kind of get together and put their brains together and get some of that work accomplished while you have all your friends in the same room. And then we always have some fellowship time. So some games, we've done outdoor games or trips to a park nearby. We've done a big Kahoot in the past on LYO trivia. So there are all kinds of options, and usually fellowship and hospitality helps lead us in that time. And again, that's just a time for some community building and for the chance for us to have a little bit of fun. The meetings run from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. So we do provide lunch, and we do that on a rotating basis by team. So each team is responsible for lunch once throughout the year. So that spreads out the work of providing lunch. And some teams have their lunch that they're committed to and that they'll always do. And then some teams like to switch it up. But that's another great opportunity for us to gather over a meal and to share in that together. And then on the months where there aren't all team meetings, generally teams will have a meeting with their individual team. And sometimes those happen on Zoom. This year they've mostly happened by Zoom, but they also happen at different locations, often at the churches of folks who are on that team. All team meetings are a really important piece of LYO because it's one of the ways that we get together and can get lots of work done, but also, again, build some of that community and get to share in this thing that we're all doing together. So it's really important that folks attend, but we also know that our LYOers are often involved in multiple activities in band or chorus or theater or sport or debate team or any number of things. And so one of the leadership skills that you can develop in the LYO is some of that prioritizing and saying, okay, this time I'm going to do the LYO thing, but for this other time, I'm going to go to my basketball game, and figuring out some of that work and then managing your schedule. And so there's lots of grace there for if you're not able to participate in every single thing. And there are also ways for you to be connected digitally to the meetings that are happening if you're not able to be there physically, but you can join virtually. And a lot of that happens through LYOers talking with their mentors and just saying, hey, I'm not able to be at this activity. What would you recommend to make sure that I'm all caught up? And mentors are a great resource for helping develop some of those time management and prioritization skills that are super important for the rest of our lives and that we have a chance to practice in LYO. Then we have our weekend events. So that's what I know many of you are very familiar with the opportunities to gather on the weekend. The first event of the year is actually one that most young people in our synod haven't attended because it's just for the LYO. So it's a chance for the LYO to get together at Marlou Ridge for the organizing retreat. And that's exactly what we do. We organize ourselves. We do some trainings that relate to the theme that we're going to be exploring for the year. It has a chance for the teams to get to meet together. Every year, the teams are different because folks have graduated and new folks have joined. And so it's a chance for them to do some bonding and to get to know one another and to learn about what each person is bringing to the table and what their passions are that year. And it's a chance for us to do some work as the whole LYO on figuring out what are our goals for this coming year, setting some learning goals and just getting ready to launch into this, the upcoming year. So that happens at the end of August, and it is a required event, especially for new LYOers, because of all the important work of getting started that takes place there. For this year, we're planning to meet in person at Marlou Ridge, and we are in close contact with Marlou Ridge about their precautions that they're taking and the things that we can do to decrease risk. But we also know that some folks may not be able to receive the vaccine for some reason, but may be immunocompromised or may just not feel comfortable gathering in person. So there will be, we can have conversation about how, if you're not able to come to the organizing retreat in person, that we can connect you to that virtually, so that you can be a part of it, but that you are able to continue to feel safe. And so that looks a little bit different this year than it has in other years. But either way, that time is a really important time of formation and bonding. And so it's important to be available during those dates. And again, that's on the calendar for the year. Then beginning in October, we launch into our events that are open to young people all across our synod and Metro D.C. Synod. Again, this is sort of a new thing that we're doing where we're combining everything together in our two synods, and we're really excited to share that ministry together. So in October, we have Free Ride, which is a retreat for 6th through 8th graders at North Bay Retreat Center in Northeast Maryland. North Bay is a really incredible place. They have really fun adventure outdoor activities like zip lines and rock climbing and a ropes course. And it's a really beautiful setting for a fall weekend retreat. And then in January, we have Road Trip in Ocean City, Maryland, held in a hotel in Ocean City for grades 9 through 12. And so those events have a lot of similarities, but there are a couple of differences between them. But the most important part of all of our events is that nearly everything is led by an LYOer. You might see the chaplain for the weekend, who is often a pastor or a deacon, who does some speaking at our large group events. They're usually an adult, and they're usually adults hanging around making sure that everything is running smoothly, but otherwise, pretty much everything is led by our LYOers. And the goal there is that you are getting to practice leadership right in that moment among your peers, and saying, here are the gifts that I have, here are the things that our team has been working on, and I'm capable of leading those right now. So it's a really great time, especially for the participants of the events, to be able to see people who look a little bit more like them leading an event rather than just having a bunch of adults standing up there talking at you. So that's really unique for us. Then in the spring, we have Transformers, which is also held at Marlou Ridge. And that event is intended for middle schoolers who have some leadership gifts. And so the LYO plans and runs the whole retreat, and they're inviting middle school students to think about, what does it look like for me to be a leader? So it's sort of, meta, if you will, that our young leaders are helping develop other young leaders. It's a really excellent retreat. It's a really fantastic time. I always love any time that we can get to Marlou Ridge. And so that retreat is always a real joy to see LYOers putting all the things they've learned over the year into action, having planned a retreat from start to finish. At the same time, the plan is to have retreat 3, 4, 5, which is in one night retreat for the 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders, and that there might even be the opportunity for Transformers and retreat 3, 4, 5 to come together, and for the middle schoolers to lead the 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders. So we're just like doing all kinds of leadership development, and we want to make sure that young people know that your leadership gifts are super important right now. Then usually in the summer, we have the high school leadership event, which has normally been held at Gettysburg Seminary. We weren't able to have it last year or this year, but we're looking forward to having it next year. And that retreat is entirely planned by the LYO graduating seniors. So again, just another chance for them to really bring together all the things that they've learned over their time in LYO to share that with anyone who wants to attend the retreat who is in 8th through 12th grade that year. So it's a really fun, little bit more of a laid back event with lots of really great fun time and free time, but then also chances to really dig deep into issues that are important to you as young people. One of the most important things about how we do these events and why they are learning events and not just, hey, come give us some free work to put on an event, is that we do an action reflection model. So after everyone leaves the retreat and gets on their way, LYO sticks around and we have lunch together, and we have a chance to gather both among our teams and then also in mixed groups so that you get different perspectives and talk through what are the things that went really well this weekend, what are the things that we could do better next time, where are some of the moments where I saw God. And that's a really excellent time where we can sort of figure out what we did really well, how we can improve, and what some of the most powerful moments of that weekend were. And so that's really important in our learning, is that we, you know, again, we're all not just showing up to do some work. We're showing up to learn and to continue to evaluate so that we can always continue to improve and to figure out how we can create these spaces for young people to explore their faith and their understanding of God and Jesus even better. Another way that we accomplish our goals in the LYO is through congregational mentors. And so these are adults in the congregation that the LYO is a member of who serve in some sort of way that's connected to the team that they're on. So sometimes, you know, a fellowship and hospitality member might be mentored by an adult who serves on the evangelism team. Sometimes small group leaders are mentored by people who lead Bible studies. Music team members are often mentored by someone who's involved in the music ministry at the church. And the role of the congregational mentor is to help advocate for youth leadership in the congregation and to help the LYOer bring in all the things that they're learning in LYO and practice it in the congregation. We're doing some continued work on setting learning goals and bringing the congregational mentors into that work so that we can strengthen that relationship and really make sure that our young people feel like they have an advocate, a supporter within their congregation to help them sort of navigate some of the systems that take place, but also to help them reflect on how does this learning that I have apply to my context. That's a lot, and the LYO is a significant time commitment, but we do know that our young people have experienced lots of transformation in their understanding of what it means to be a leader, and that they're doing really incredible things for the church and the world. Yeah, it's just an absolute joy to work with these young people. So what does it cost to be an LYO? Well, first of all, there are no membership fees ever, so you don't pay any sort of flat fee to be a member. The only thing that you pay for is the cost of an event. So if you were going to an event as a participant, you would pay the registration fee that covers your housing, your meals, a t-shirt, always a t-shirt, and the other aspects of an event. We subsidize the cost for LYOers because you are doing so much work and because you have to be at these events throughout the year. So LYOers pay less than the normal registration fee. And over the program year, the total cost of events is about $500. Other costs to take into consideration are transportation. That's the biggest one, but we often are able to find folks who can help with carpooling so that we can sort of share some of that cost as well. And scholarships are available. So money should never be a reason that someone can't participate in LYO. And so we have specific scholarship money set aside for LYOers exclusively, so that if maybe all of a sudden it's time to register for a road trip and you just can't afford it, all you have to do is say, hey, Deacon Julie, can I get a scholarship for road trip? And I say, yep, absolutely. That's the whole process for LYOers applying for scholarships, because we want to make sure that it doesn't ever come down to, can I participate in this? Or can I like afford all the things that our family needs? And so that's really important. If there are ever any concerns about finances, please come and talk to me. I'm really happy to find ways that we can help so that that doesn't ever become a barrier. So now I'd like to invite Alex and Anna to just share a little bit about their experience in LYO and what's been great about it and why they would encourage someone to join LYO. So Alex and Anna, I'll let you decide your order. They're gonna Rochambeau for it.
I'll go. So originally, at like the end of my 8th grade year, I wanted to join LYO because I really just like fell in love with the retreats, and I said, look, I just want to keep going to these retreats all the time, so I'm gonna join LYO. But throughout my freshman year and ever since, I've learned that LYO has done so much for me. Personally, I've learned to lead people so much better than I was. And I learned how to have like more meaningful conversations with people, especially people my own age, even people older than me. I feel like I can have better conversations with them. It also taught me how to create, and with those conversations, I created some great bonds, some deep bonds, everything. And I've met friends for life. I mean, probably gonna be my wedding, hopefully. Um, and I mean, I'm still in touch with them, even if they've graduated, even if they were a senior when I was a freshman. I still talk to them. They're some of my best friends. And I mean, yeah, it's just taught me how to pretty much live my life. And it's taught me how so many more ways to worship. For me, before I joined, my idea of worship was, go to church on Sunday, sit in a pew, listen to a pastor preach, hear a couple songs, take communion, everything like that. But continuing to go to retreats, the worship team specifically has taught me, there's so many ways to pray. There's not one like set way. Any way you want to pray, that's fine. You can do that. I learned a lot more about more contemporary worship services. I've learned how the church is kind of progressing and how I think and I want it to progress. And yeah, it's just been great 4 years, and I'm thankful that I've stuck with it and everything.
For me, I'm still only a junior, but I have been here since my freshman year. And throughout middle school, I went to almost every single retreat that I could go to. Because at these retreats, I would meet new people, I would make friends, I would interact with people. And I'm a person who is very hesitant to interact with people. So that was definitely something really cool for me. And what I could do on that. I was like, I'm 100% doing that because I'm going to these retreats that I connect with people and make new friends and all that fun stuff. And I'm like, I want to be that person for someone. I want to be in that group. It helps make those connections and all that. And in particular, for me on music team, I saw these people on stage and I'm like, I really don't like being in this crowd in the audience. That's just not a fun experience for me. So I was like, I would love to be like up there. That sounds fun. And now here I am. I play piano for the music team. It's really neat. Now I own general, not just the music team, but I've learned a lot of just general life skills, from like having conversations with people to like active listening and other like leadership strategies and such that I've taken back to like my own church and being on my church council, as well as like even like school and just all over. Just all sorts of experiences and skills. And I feel like I'm definitely repeating myself quite a bit. So I'm just going to go ahead and say that that's my spiel.
Thanks, Anna and Alex. It's always great to hear from our young people about the experience that they're having, because that's the whole reason that we do this, is for you as LYOers. So yeah, thanks, both of you. Now we're going to hear a little bit from some church leaders about why LYO, or like how LYO has made a difference in their congregation. I'm actually going to start with Pastor Sarah Garrett-Cray. I invited her to be a part of this, and she had commitments each night, but she said, oh, I'm so passionate about my LYOers, like, will you let me record a video so that I can share? So I obviously said yes. And so we'll hear a little bit from her, and then we'll hear from Pastor Tara, and then maybe if Pastor Christine is willing to share also, we can hear from her. So here's Pastor Sarah Garrett-Cray.
Hi, I'm Pastor Sarah Garrett-Cray. I'm one of the pastors at Salem Lutheran Church in Catonsville, Maryland. I want to just talk really briefly about the joys of having LYOers in our congregation and the ways that they enhance our congregational life and community. Our LYOers enhance our life together in a lot of ways. Number one, just by showing up, right? It is a gift when young people show up to this thing that we call church, to this thing that we call life together as a community of faith. And so I'm really grateful for all of the ways that our LYOers do show up. They serve on church council, they lead worship, they lead service and outreach projects. We just recently did a youth-led Easter Vigil, which was beautiful and wonderful and a new thing for us. And so our LYOer who is on the worship and music team led almost all of our music for that and put in a ton of rehearsal time, and that turned out really beautifully. Our LYOers shared the stories of God's action in the world through the Easter Vigil readings, which was beautiful, and our LYOers preached and shared the good news. And they do that in a lot of ways pretty regularly. But what I think is most powerful to me about LYO is not how it prepares our youth to serve us, but how I see faith formation and development at play in LYO. I think sometimes churches can have this sort of confirmation to ambivalence pipeline, right? Of our 7th and 8th graders oftentimes getting like a couple of years of like intensive faith formation, all leading up to confirmation. And then we sort of treat confirmation like a graduation and like, okay, you are faithfully formed. And I see LYO as a bridge there in those really formative years for our youth. And I see LYOers sort of coming to this understanding that they have important perspectives and important questions and important things to share about God, about their faith, about the church institution. And I see them recognizing, oh, I have the ability to elicit change and make an impact in the world. I see them recognizing that they're a vital part of a community of faith that spans centuries, right? And seeing themselves as part of this larger narrative and being emboldened to speak into that. And I think all of our youth, whether they're involved in LYO or not, have these questions about God, have these questions about what all of this means for our lives. But what I see sort of clicking, especially for our LYOers, is that they see themselves as active participants in God's story. And that's what I think is so beautiful. After Good Friday, one of my LYOers texted me after worship and said, "Did Jesus forgive Pontius Pilate?" And so we sort of talked about that a little bit. And then she said, oh my gosh, are we all a little bit of Pontius Pilate, right? So faced with this choice between doing what is right and what the crowds are screaming at us. And that, I saw this like click for her, right? Of like, whoa, I see how this impacts my life and how I live and move and share God's story in the world. And that's what I just think is so beautiful about LYO. So thank you, Julie, for letting me share a little bit. Oh. Hi, I'm Pastor Sarah Garrett Cray.
I just watched again. Great. Now, Pastor Tara, would you be able to share a little bit, and if you would like to, maybe even share a little bit about how you've seen some of those things as a parent as well?
How those things, oh, as a mom? Is that what you said?
Yeah, as a parent, yeah.
Right. So I was just thinking, so Sarah did a great job of sharing the wonders of being a pastor. So many LYO in a congregation. Ours went from two, so I've been at Grace for almost 6 years now. And when I got there, we had 2 youth involved in LYO. They were a pair of brothers. And now I think we keep on having more sign up every year, which is awesome. And it's been great to see, sorry. It's been great to see the growth in our youth. It's great to see them understand themselves as the church today, and be treated the same way. So I'm one of those crazy pastors that reminds my confirmands that they are the church today. Not to let anybody ever tell them that they're not needed and they're not wanted in the church today, including from me. They're welcome to call me on it. So, it's also wonderful to see them come out of their, I wouldn't say come out of their shell, but they learn where their leadership gifts are. So it's more confidence than it is shyness. I think that they need to remember that they have real gifts for leading ministry. And I am just chuckling, one, because the one LYO at Grace who's on the elementary school team has now been tagged to do an extra project for Pentecost. So as a mom and as a pastor, so that's a unique combination. I learned just how much my son actually has been listening to me as a pastor, which is humbling, and as a mom, which is also humbling. So moms, if you weren't quite sure, you might be surprised how much your kids are listening to you. As a mom with an LYO student, it's been great to see him grow. LYO has only encouraged that. I happily tell folks my son has character and he is a character, which is true. I'm seeing Anna laugh because of course she knows him. And Christina's laughing too because she knows him too. And he now sits on council. So not because his mom told him to do it either. But because he said he would, and he's offered questions or opinions on what it is. So I was gonna say, sorry, my husband is the one behind me now, so I was not quite sure if David was there listening. So I will say I was thinking about the time commitment because you mentioned that earlier. As a parent, I remember thinking that's a lot. But one, there was always somebody to ride with. And two, it was always understood that life happens. And so if there's someplace else you needed to be, then there's someplace else you needed to be. The cool thing is that most of the time, if David had a choice, he would way rather be with LYO. He would way rather be with LYO. So I'm just pointing out that the only thing I think that has ever trumped LYO, I think has been a lacrosse game for school has trumped LYO once. And maybe like family events has trumped LYO once. So, and he's a junior, so that's in 3 years. Yeah, I know, crazy, right? So, so he loves it, and he's willing to put himself out front more often. And some of that is because I find out that he put himself out front after retreats. So the balance to being a pastor and parent of an LYO person is I don't take the chaperone role as many times with my youth right now because I need David to be a leader without worrying about what's mom gonna say. But that also means my chaperones happily film him when he gets up at the talent show and does a talk on, what was it, success? Something like that. I don't remember, but yeah.
Something like that. Thanks.
Something like that. I just, oh, he did what? He did what? Yeah.
Pastor Christine, would you be willing to share a little bit as well?
Sure. Yeah. So yeah, I serve Epiphany Lutheran Church in Northeast Baltimore, and we have had a few LYOers, and they have, I mean, it's interesting because I don't know, it's been a strange year for LYO and for youth group in general. And it's just interesting that in pandemic times, they had no interest whatsoever in doing like Zoom youth group. It was just not something that was enticing to them, but they always made a priority to be at the Zoom LYO gatherings because they just, I mean, it was the only way they were going to be able to see those people. And so they made that a priority. And then it really helped them in very different ways, and interestingly, to kind of grow into their own and become kind of the kind of people that you always knew was there, but helped them kind of step into it more fully. So it's been fun to see. It's just hard because now they're all graduating and we didn't get to do it with them, but I'm excited to see what the next couple of years will bring as we grow into that. So
thank you. So I hope that this highlights that LYO really is a mutual relationship as well. And so there's lots of development and things that are happening for you as a youth. But then also there's lots of development and leadership learning that's happening in our congregations as well. And so it doesn't just flow one way. It's really important that we look at both of those aspects of it. How are we growing as young leaders, and how are congregations growing in supporting and lifting up young leaders? All right, so how do you join LYO? What does that look like? So the application process is going to open at the end of April. The application will be found on our website, and I just put that link in the chat, but it's just on if you click on Youth and Family Ministry and then Leadership Development Program, it'll take you right to that page. So at the end of April, the application form will be posted on that page. That form just collects some personal information, so your contact information, where you're a member, those kinds of things. We'll ask a few questions for you to reflect on, often about ways that you've shown leadership or some of the gifts that you have, those kinds of things. And then you'll also order your teams by preference. So you'll list them in order from 1 to 6 of which teams you want to serve on. And that helps us as we then we sort you onto your team, which I'll talk about in a moment. You'll ask someone, an adult who is not related to you, to serve as a reference. And so they'll fill out a form, and then we'll reach out to you to schedule a Zoom meeting or a phone call with me or Christine or Pastor Mark Parker. We're serving as the LYO coordinators. So one of us will schedule a meeting with you and with at least one parent or guardian, so that we can just talk a little bit about your application and get to know you a little bit better, and talk through some of those things. And then we'll also talk with your adult reference and then your pastor, deacon, and or youth worker. And so we end up making lots of phone calls through June. The application deadline for new applicants will be June 15th. So you have until June 15th to fill out that application. And then we will have decisions emailed to you by early July. And then on July 11th, we'll be gathering virtually for what we call sorting day. And that's a chance for each accepted LYOer to meet with the mentors of usually their top 2 choice team, to have a little bit of conversation about what gifts that they have that they could bring to that team, and what might be the best fit for them. And then we sort everyone into their teams. And I can't think of a time when someone wasn't sorted onto one of their top 2 teams. We really make every effort for that to be the case for folks. But there is also sometimes you get onto a team and you are like, well, this was my second choice. I'm not super excited. And you learn to really love it. And you say, oh, this is actually where God was calling me to be. And sometimes you get put onto a team, whether it was your first or second choice, and you say, that's really what I thought. And I think maybe I'm better suited for another team. And so at the end of that year, you're able to indicate that, and then you just go through sorting day again. So there's always the opportunity to discern and to figure out what the best place is for you. And again, that's a way that your adult mentors and I can be a part of that conversation with you if you're just not quite sure. So then sorting day will be July 11th, again via Zoom. And then we will gather in August for the organizing retreat. So that's a little bit of the overview of how all of that happens. Okay, I'm going to stop the recording now. Thanks to those of you who are watching this later for joining us, that we can take some questions.